So we need to make some changes here to our bids. I could do some of this in Ad Console. I'm going to end up doing a lot of this in Mershar just because it gives you some extra tools and filtering that's hard to do inside of Ad Console. Now, if you are not a Mershar user, you can just use your ad console to make some changes. You can do this in your targeting. One thing I don't like about the targeting is that you can't filter by product. If you're doing like single ASIN campaigns and being able to filter using a specific ASIN, that can't really be done in targeting. You do it in bulk operations where you could do more of that. So you can download your spreadsheets and so forth. I'm not going to do that. So we're going to jump over to Mershar. All right. So we're over in Mershar now on the dashboard, and we just did a recent dashboard update to add the CPC cost per click graph to our dashboard area. And the other big change we made is that the graphs now follow your date range. So you can look at a longer day period if you want, and it'll update the graphs. And you can track longer periods, or if you want to track shorter, you can do that. You can also just click and drag to zoom into a specific area. All right, so we're looking at just the last week of data that we've been looking at since last Sunday. And you can see our ACOS has been steadily increasing over this week, as well as the cost per click also going up, which probably has something to do with that. Conversion rate, somewhat flat, but we need, with how high the ACOS has been the last few days, today is really high. That tends to become less as order data comes in. There's a little bit of delay with that, so that tends to improve over the day, or once the numbers start to finalize next day, 48 hours. So that should improve. So we're probably not actually at a 61% ACOS, but it's still a little higher than I'd like to be. And just based on how much we've spent in total versus our total royalties we're receiving in, it's just higher than I really want to be. I want to get closer to that kind of 1-to-1 ratio that I mentioned earlier. So before I make any changes to my bids, I'm going to adjust my target ACOS across all my campaigns, because this can be used to help us figure out what our bids are with our target cost per click. Mershar has a field here that calculates what your cost per click should be based on what you have your target ACOS set and the conversion rate that you're seeing for your product over the time period that you have set. So you can see here with some of these having a 26, 24%, etc. ACOS, it tells us what our target CPC should be based on the conversion rate we've been getting over this date range. And then it gives us kind of that's more of a barometer we can use to see where our current cost per click is versus what that target cost per click is. And that doesn't necessarily mean we want to set the bid to what the target cost per click is, especially if you're using things like placement adjustments or up and down bidding strategy that could modify what your bid actually is and affect what your cost per click is. But it gives us more of that barometer that we can say, okay, our target CPC is much lower than our CPC. We want to start bringing our cost per click towards our target CPC. So we're going to lower our bids to be closer to that. And it just gives you kind of an idea of how far away your current bid is versus where you need to be. So we're just going to change the target ACOS across the board for all of our products. I'm going to set it to a 30% ACOS, which is a little bit higher than break even. It's on average about 25, 26% ACOS for my products. That's break even. I'm being a little bit more aggressive with the holiday season. So I'm just going to do 30% across all of my products. And then for my hero product, I think I'm going to set it at 35%. I still want to be more aggressive with that to compete with some of the other high competition, high converting products that I'm competing against. So to change the target ACOS, I'm just going to select all of my campaigns and bulk action, target ACOS, and we're going to, I could delete it. Let's just delete to start it here. And I could set this on the account level. So essentially the way the target ACOS works is I can set it at the account level. If I jump into my settings, I can do that, or I can set it for each campaign. So what I did was just delete it. So everything's taking the default account level target ACOS. So I'm just going to jump over to my settings to change it. This will be the easiest way. And then my default target ACOS, let's just set it to 30%. That should update everything. And if we go back to our campaigns, we'll see that it is at 30% across the board. And if we want to modify that just for our hero product, I'm going to type just part of the ASIN into the search bar to bring up just the campaigns for that. And we're still at 35%. And I'm just going to apply a bulk action to all of them. So selecting the arrow, then select all bulk actions, target ACOS. We're going to set it to 35% and let that run. All right, so that has updated. Now it's 35% across the board for our hero product. So that adjusts what the target CPC is, again, based on what our target ACOS, conversion rate, and the product price is. That gives us what our ideal cost per click should be to hit that number that we want. And now that we've updated that, we can move over to start adjusting our bids. And I'm going to do a lot of this manually. And where I do most of that at is in the targets and the keyword section of Merchjar. So we're going to start with the target section, and targets are going to include any auto campaign targets. So that's your close match, loose match, complements, and substitutes, and any ASIN targets from your manual targeting campaigns. All right, so let's start making some optimizations. First thing I'm going to do is adjust our date range, and I'm going to start our date range at Tuesday after Cyber Monday, because this is going to be the most similar kind of sales and performance that's been happening, that's currently happening, where Cyber Monday is kind of that anomaly big sales day. So I want to exclude that sort of data. So I'm going to start with Tuesday and just go through today. And I have some saved filters that I can end up using. I think I'm just going to do this manually with our filters here. And I'm going to keep this pretty simple. I'm not going to make this overly complicated. Essentially, what I'm going to do is take stuff that's over my target ACOS and decrease the bid. I'll do that at a couple different levels. So more of a decrease on the higher, the stuff that's further away from my target ACOS and has a really high ACOS, and smaller adjustments for stuff that's pretty close to what my target ACOS is, and then just increase the bid on my performers as well. So anything that's has a really good ACOS, I'm going to make some adjustments to it. And then we'll do some other adjustments as well, things like that aren't getting impressions or have clicks but no orders. We'll take a look at that too. So let's start with our high ACOS targets and adjust those. So we're going to start with ACOS, and let's do anything that's above, let's do 75%. See if there's anything really high. And there's a couple different methods we could do with this. We could start with anything above 35% and do a small, say 10% adjustment. Then we move it up to anything greater than 45, do another 10%. I'm going to kind of bracket these where I'll make a separate adjustment to each one. But there's a couple different ways you could do that. You could just kind of keep stacking adjustments on top of the same, but I'm going to do more of a bracketing method. So I'm going to separate each one. So if anything greater than 75%, then for example, 50 to 75%. All right, so here's our targets. We have 9 targets that have an ACOS of greater than 75% since last Tuesday, and they have at least one order because it has an ACOS. So we want to lower these bids. And normally I would want at least 2 orders before I'm doing any kind of bid adjustments based on the ACOS. I want more points of data than just 1. However, these need to have some adjustments made because even though it only has 1 order, it's still spending quite a bit. And with how high my bids are right now, I want to make some adjustments. And based on what this ACOS is and what our conversion rates are, again, we can see our target ACOS or target CPC compared to our current one and kind of see how far away we are and how big of an adjustment that we need to make. So most of these are pretty far apart. I'm not going to make super drastic. I'm not going to do anything like a 50%, which a lot of these looks like at least a 50% decrease in target CPC. That's a pretty big adjustment. I don't want to just take all these and just completely wipe them out where they're not getting impressions, but I am going to make a fairly sizable adjustment. And I'm just going to select all of them and change bid, and we're going to decrease the bid. I'm going to do a 30% decrease. So it's still pretty sizable, and then let that run. Now that the bid's changed, we can kind of spot check, just see where it's at versus what the previous cost per click was and where it's at in relation to our target cost per click. So you can see most of these have gone closer to what our target CPC is. We're below what our cost per click, our bid is below what our cost per click is. So that should help stabilize these and bring down that ACOS ideally. And then next, we're just going to kind of move down the line. So we're going to do an ACOS between 50 and 75% now. So still pretty high. And we're just going to do a similar thing here. And If you want it to exclude anything from here, you can use the search bar to do that. So for example, if you want to exclude lottery campaigns, which may not be a terrible idea for me since I'm doing those manually, I can type in minus not colon lottery, and this will exclude any lottery campaigns or ad groups from this. So you can see some of those were lottery campaigns. And if I had multiple keywords, for example, I don't know, exact match, I could do that as long as I wrap it in quotes. And I could also do multiple negation keywords from here as well. But I'm going to stick to just the lottery campaigns. I just did some adjustments on those yesterday, so I don't need to mess with those yet. I want them to start getting data based on the new bids. So I'm going to keep it where it's at. So these are campaigns that have between 50 and 75% ACoS. You can see our CPC versus our target CPC. And we're going to make a similar adjustment, change bid, decrease it. I'm going to go 20% on these and let that run. And now that the bids have refreshed to what the new bid after that 20% decrease, I'm just going to just quickly spot check these, make sure, see where the new bid is versus the cost per click and the target CPC. And you can make some small minor adjustments for that. For example, these two here they're still pretty close to what the CPC is that are getting 50 and 70%. So we can do an adjustment. So from 157, and this is just, I'm just kind of decreasing more. I'm not really doing math. And you can see what the bid history is too, if you want to get a little bit more data on that. I mean, you can see recently in the last several days, it's been a little bit all over the place as the bids have changed quite a bit. So we're going to bring this down to, I don't know, I think something like our target's CPC 78 cents. I don't know, something like 110, 115 is probably fine. And then we're going to do something similar with this. So 135 and 93, maybe split the difference a little bit, but 110, that feels fine. Enter and let that save. And then we're going to keep moving. So now we're going to do, we're going to keep 50% on the top end and our target's 35. I think I guess 30 is our target. So I would say let's do 40 and 50%. So these are our targets that are at between 40 and 50% ACoS. And again, we can kind of spot check these real quick to see where we're at, but we need to decrease those. And I'm not going to do as big of a change. I'm only going to do I think 10 or a 15% would be okay. I think I'm going to do a 10% since these aren't too far away from where we want to be. We're still being aggressive and I don't want to make too large of changes. I'm in here making changes daily for the most part, sometimes multiple times a day, just as I check and see kind of where today's data is versus the last. And we might do that after this because currently we're looking at the last 6 or so days of data. We may also spot check that against the last 2 days of data, 3 days of data, just to see if there's any major differences there with the more recent cost per click. And that's something that's important with just this time of year, how much things change. You need to be in here kind of often. And this is where a tool like Mersha really shines to be able to adjust these date ranges versus bulk operations where you're constantly having to download different reports. This kind of tool can really speed up your workflow when you're constantly shifting your date ranges, your filters on the fly. But if you're not a Mersha user and you're kind of just using this to learn, you can sign up for your free trial. There's no credit card required, so it doesn't cost you anything. You can optimize your biz through the rest of the holiday season, till the end of the year at no cost to you. So if you'd like to get started with your free trial and speed up your workflow, there'll be a link in the description to sign up for free. And similar process here, we're just going to spot check these now that we've made our adjustment just to make sure everything's okay. So for example, this one here, our target CPC isn't too far away. So I'm okay with just setting that to our target CPC. I'm just going to kind of spot check each one after that 10% adjustment. This one's too close to the CPC versus the target. We're going to change that to, I don't know, 125. This one needs to come down a bit. Let's just call this one 95 cents and this one as well. So this is what I mean when it's just kind of a gut feeling, just kind of, this is what you gain once you do a little bit more advertising. You can just go in, make some adjustments. You don't need to do math on each one of these to figure out exactly what the bid is because it just doesn't matter that precisely as long as you're kind of moving that bid towards what your target CPC is based on what that current data is. And then our last decrease in bids for our poor performers, we're going to do let's do 33 to 40%. We could even do maybe 35. The 33 is okay, I think. However, I want to not include my hero product because I want a little bit higher ACOS with that. So anything for my hero product that's 40% higher, and you can see a few of them here that have the 35%. I can negate that as well by doing the same thing as the lottery by another not, so forth. There's only one here that's not. So I'm going to, this I can just do a manual adjustment for. I don't need to do any kind of bulk adjustments. This one's 35%, a little bit. This one we actually want to bring up closer to our target CPC. I'm just going to set it at what our target CPC is to hit that 30% ACOS. And that's it for our poor performers that have at least an order. So anything that we've done that has an ACOS during this time period has at least one order. So now we're going to move to our performers, and we're going to do a similar kind of bracketing system with this. And I think we're going to start on the top end. Anything that's got a 24, 25% ACOS. I'm going to do, I think, 3 brackets, something like 18 to 25%, 10 to 18%, then anything below 10%. So let's start with this one here. You can see I still got the lottery. I don't have another filter. So these are ones that are performing well. And you can see they're green here based on what the target ACOS is. So these we want to increase bids generally. And I'm just going to spot check. If we look at what the bid is versus our target cost per click, we can increase these. And some of them, it's not going to really matter if we increase it or not, especially if there's a huge difference between what our bid is and what the cost per click is. There just may not be competition where you could set your bid at $10 if you wanted to, and there's just not competition at those higher bid levels that the cost per click is going to raise, but it is possible. So we generally just want to still increase the bid across the board with all these. So same kind of thing. I'm just going to select all these, and these are the closest performers to our target ACOS. I'm going to do the smallest increase in bid. So make sure we got increase bid percent. You can do this by $1 or set it to a specific thing. I generally do a percentage increase because the bids are going to really vary across all my campaigns. Sometimes for a specific target or campaign, it's got, 30-cent bid versus another one needs a $1.50 bid. So a 5-cent increase is a lot more proportionally for that lower bid one and could have a lot more volatility or variance to it than doing a 5-cent bid on a $1.50 existing bid where it's just not going to really make as much of a difference. So we're doing small changes across the board with these. 10% bid should do it with where these are currently sitting at over the last several days of data. And we're going to keep moving. So we're going to do now our 10 to 18% and do an increase here. This one, let's do 15%. So we're going to stagger it and do a little bit more because these are performing even better and a little bit further from our target ACOS. And then you can spot check the bid versus target CPC. I'm just going to keep moving. That's something you can do. And now I'm going to do anything below 10%. To do this with ACOS, you do want to type in MERSChart 0.1 or some kind of digit here because anything 0% is going to show 0 orders as well, which we don't want to include. So we're going to do anything between 0.1 and 10% to make sure we're only grabbing stuff that has an order. And these are our best performers. So stuff that's getting orders from few clicks. And it's not tons of data, but we want to push these as much as possible while the iron's hot. So we're going to select all of them and let's do a 20% bid. And you could be more conservative. This is kind of on the higher side, but if it's performing now, let's try to get as many clicks and impressions, and hopefully that conversion rate continues. And if you do want to be a little more conservative, you could limit this to at least 2 orders. So that would obviously really limit the number that we're increasing on, or even have a click threshold as well to just have even more data. Make sure you're only increasing stuff on things that have been a little more validated. 1 point of data, 1 order, and 7 clicks isn't tons of data. Again, I'm being a little bit more aggressive, so I'm okay increasing bids on these that maybe I wouldn't normally through most of the year. I want more data. All right, so now we've decreased bids on stuff with orders that isn't performing. We've increased bids on stuff with orders that is performing. Next, we want to take a look at stuff that doesn't have any orders but's getting clicks. So we're going to get rid of the ACOS filter, and we're going to add an orders filter. Is only stuff that has 0, and we only want stuff that has clicks. And this is where you could set a threshold for what we want to see is stuff that's getting a lot of clicks that maybe we just want to lower the bid down a little bit. Let's see how much we got with anything that's got more than 10 clicks. So not a ton. And you can see in total, this is only $11 in spend over that. And based on what I'm spending in total, this isn't a whole lot. So let's bring this down. Let's see anything more than 6, what that's doing for us. That's a little bit better. And about $62 in spend. So still not a ton over this date range, but it doesn't hurt to lower these. So this is just another item to look at. I'm just going to do just a small decrease in bid. They haven't really gotten sales. We're just going to do 10%. And then the last thing I'm going to look at for this date range is anything that's not getting impressions. So we're going to take off clicks, we're going to take off orders, and anything that's getting, we could just do equal 0 impressions. We can also set a threshold, which I tend to like a little bit better, in which case I do want to also just anything that's not getting, actually you could leave off click. You could add a click threshold if you're doing something like less than, I don't know, 20 impressions over the last several days. I mean, this is only on average 4 or 5 impressions per day. So we could increase this as well to get more. The other consideration I'm making is I'm already spending a lot in relation, or at least yesterday, I spent a lot in relation to what my current profit is today as well. So you could skip this. I should mention what this optimization is, but I'm increasing bid on stuff that's not showing very often yet. And this is something you want to check as well, especially as competition changes or increases throughout the holiday sales season. Stuff that was being seen, getting impressions and getting clicks and getting orders with a certain level of bid 3 days ago may not even be seen anymore today if there's more competition. The entry price to compete for the bid has just gone up to where your bid is no longer competitive. So you need to keep an eye on this to make sure they're still delivering. And this is particularly true for your best sellers, your hero products. Make sure those campaigns are selling. Right now, I'm just doing kind of blanket across the board optimizations for this now. So I'm going to stick with 30 impressions and see how many targets we get. And it's 969, so pretty high amount, but I'm going to just do a very small, I'm only going to do a 5% increase. So we're not talking a lot, and that may increase a little bit of spend, but it shouldn't be too crazy. And this is just, again, across the entire account. So I'm being a little bit more conservative. All right, so that optimization is done. I'm going to clear the filters and change our date range. I'm going to spot check Thursday through today. And I'm going to add a state filter, make sure it's only things that are enabled. And then just look at my targets that have a really high ACoS again. So let's just look at 50% over the last couple of days. And we're just going to spot check these, make sure everything looks okay. So this is anything greater than 50%. And you can see just over the last couple of days, I do have some that are pretty high. And if we look at, again, the target CPC, this gives us an idea of where we should be versus the cost per click. And this is more recent data, which is always better, especially this time of year. And we're mostly going to be concerned about the ones that are really spending. We could just do a blanket adjustment. It looks like one is already close to the target CPC. Some of these other ones are quite a bit higher, but I'm really more concerned about these ones spending $300 plus. So those single targets are spending over $100 a day. And I'm going to start just by doing an adjustment on all of them. I'm going to skip this one because that's the one that stands out to me that's pretty close, or it's already at the target CPC. So I'm just going to uncheck that and skip it. And I'm just going to do let's do a 15%. And once that syncs, this is one that I will spot check again. All right, bids have adjusted. So I'm just looking through, see where we're at in relation to our CPC and our target CPC, and just kind of eyeballing if anything's still close to the actual cost per click, I'll adjust it. But I think this is good. Again, I don't need to necessarily match. Actually, this one I might raise up just to be a little bit more between. Again, I don't want to be making too large of an adjustment once where they just stop delivering it at all. Again, I still want these to deliver, especially ones that are getting 200 orders. I don't want to just take those out of the running, but I also need to start making a little bit more profit or heading in that direction. And if you want to keep going with this, you could do a similar thing where we can take a look at, again, 35 to 50%, and we could remove anything. For example, my hero product will just remove, and we're just going to spot check CPC versus target CPC, and you can make I don't need to do anything too crazy. Some of these are a little higher. We could just do another small adjustment. Decrease bid, go 10%. All right, bids have updated, and we're just going to spot check. This one's below our target CPC now, so we're gonna do a little bit of manual adjustment there. This one could probably come down. Add. Oh, I forgot to add in also not lottery campaigns, which I have a feeling were part of this, but that's okay. All right, so we're gonna leave it at that for our performers, and we're gonna do now look at our best performers. Let's start at bottom 0.1, and let's just go to 15%. We'll just do this maybe in 2 adjustments. Again, we're looking at a small date range, so I'm not, again, really low amount of data with one order across all these for anything that's really performing. Let's include my hero product now with this. Let's get rid of lottery campaign. So I'm just typing in not lottery. And again, you can spot check this. Do you even need to make adjustments? Everything's already above what our cost per click is. This one's not, so we could make a manual adjustment there, or just do blanket, but I think I'm just gonna do some manual. There's a couple, so like here, the 65 cent, it's doing well. So let's pop this up to, I don't know, let's go 80 cents. And this one here, we wanna make sure it's above the cost per click. You can see the target is $3. We're not gonna just jump to $3. That's crazy, but we could do something like 95 cents. We don't have tons of data. So again, I mean, even these increases that I made, I wouldn't normally make these. I would do much more gradual, but I want to hit as many sales as possible right now. I can't stress that enough. I would normally be doing more of like a daily 2% bid increases kind of thing. But when you're into, January, February, there's less competition. You just have more time to optimize. Everything's fitting into a few weeks here in the holiday sales period, and it changes so often. You really need to stay on top of it. Everything else looks okay. So we're just going to change our brackets again, and let's go 15 to, 24%. Sounds good. And same deal. Let's just check out what the cost per click is versus what our current bid is. This one we can pop up, and I think we're fine with the rest of them. They're above the cost per click. Some of these could have been part of our last round of optimization, although it doesn't look like it. We do have last bid change in here as well, which can be useful, as well as the bid history if you overlay. So another advantage to using a tool like Merchstar, you just get a little bit more data, as well as just some other columns if you want to go by like revenue per click or conversion rate. There's just some additional pieces of data that you can use. Again, target CPC is one that I use quite a bit, just to again use as a barometer. And then I think the last thing I'm going to do is get rid of our ACOS, and I'm going to change our date range to just yesterday and today, and then I'm going to filter down to just our hero product. And now I want to see anything that's not getting impressions just for our hero product, just yesterday and today. And this is again going back to keeping on top of bids not being competitive enough. And I'm just going to do an increase across the board, small increase, try to get some impressions on these. And this being my hero product, I'm okay being a little more aggressive on this. I'm gonna get impressions across the board. I'm gonna go 15%, and that's it. So that's our last optimization for targets. And to save time, I'm not gonna do the keywords, but I would take the exact same optimizations over to the keywords and run them there. So just to recap real quick, that's going to be a little bit longer date range. So I'm starting with Tuesday, and I'm going to keep using that date until we get a little bit further, probably maxing out at about the last 7 days of data. Again, starting with Tuesday, because that's just Cyber Monday is kind of its own thing. It's a bit of an anomaly compared to after that. So we're starting with Tuesday, post Cyber Monday to current date, and then we're decreasing bids on all of our high ACOS keywords and targets, and you can bracket those and stagger the bids if you'd like. So higher changes or bigger changes on those bids, the further they are away from your target ACOS. Then we increase bids on our performers, anything that's got low ACOS, and then we looked at anything that had 0 orders but was getting clicks, and you can optionally make a small adjustment there to decrease bids. And then we looked at anything that wasn't getting impressions and made a small increase there to start getting impressions on those to keep them competitive. And last, we used a more recent date range just to spot check our targets and keywords, and most specifically your hero products. That's where you want to spend most time. If you're going to do any of that, you could limit that just to your hero products. And we did eliminate lottery campaigns from a lot of these optimizations. You could include those. I do prefer to optimize those manually at this time because of utilizing placement adjustments on those a little more heavily than I do on my other campaigns. I'm not going to walk through how to do that in this video, but I just did a video on how I optimize my lottery campaigns that I'll link in the description if you're interested in learning how to do that. And then the last thing I'm going to do for just general optimization is check my budgets to make sure I need to increase anything. They're generally pretty high and it's fairly early in the day, but this is going to be something else I'm just doing throughout the day. And I keep this pretty simple. You could use the budget tab, but just as throughout the day, as I'm going through it, I'll just scroll down and see, is there anything out of budget? This one is, and I'll look at what the ACoS is and what the campaign is for this, and does it make sense to increase? And I'm just kind of using gut feeling and based on the performance, what this looks like. And I do have a longer date range, so I'm going to start there. I'm going to do kind of a similar process. I'm going to have a little bit longer date range, go through is like, it doesn't really make sense to adjust it based on this performance. So this one had a 47% with 9 orders. Maybe not. It's already out of budget, so there's a lot more it could do. It's pretty early in the day, so I'm probably going to increase it, but I'm going to keep it where it's at for now. And I'm just going to scroll through. Is there anything else out of budget? Something else there? Not great. And I am basing it off of what the campaigns are too, and I can't even see what they are just because they're blurred out. So I will make some decisions on what the campaign is as well, or what specific product it is. So a couple ways you can do this. You can start with the longer date range, then move to a shorter date range, or you could do it in reverse. Like, does it make sense based on short-term data? I'll even look at just today's data as well when making these kinds of decisions. So if we look at that, you can see Amazon's going to give you a recommendation. You can use that if you'd like. Sometimes they are really high compared to what I think you would actually spend. Like today, they're only showing I've spent $265 on this campaign and it's already recommending $725. Does that make sense? Probably not yet. I'm going to make sure it gets closer to out of budget for making a decision to see where it ends up. But this would be another way you can increase budgets as well. So if as they run out of budget, you can look at what the ACoS is, what the current spend is, and you could even compare that to what you're actually selling. Like, see what you've sold today. It's like, okay, I've sold at least one of these, or as one gets closer to budget, if I've only made $5, for example, and this one's already spent $11, do I want to increase it when I can see I haven't sold enough to make up in ad spend? And that's where you can use some of these other date ranges to make that decision. Well, let's look at some additional data. Let's look at how it's performed over the last several days, because one day of data is not a ton, and there is delays in the orders, so this could actually have pre-orders on it, and we just don't have that data yet. But all we can do is just base on what the data that's being presented. So this one here has a recommend of $3. It's already got an order today, so I don't even really care what's happened the last several days. This is a small enough budget. I'm going to go above. I mean, $5-6 would be fine. We need to get rid of pause. We only want enabled campaign and just scroll. Okay, so nothing really going out of budget yet. This is what I would do throughout the day. Oh, this one's the one that's already out of budget. And you could go in as well and make some adjustments to the bid if that's, on the fly. CPC might be a little high based on, what you've seen previously, other date ranges. I'm looking for a reason to increase the budget generally. So I'm looking at multiple date ranges. That one I already increased. We need to sort these different. Let's sort these by spend. I don't know how it was being sorted. Where to R? Yeah, here we go. No wonder I couldn't find it. So this one's just been high over the last several days. So maybe this isn't something I want to increase. I think I'm just going to let that one go based on just the last few days of data. It's high. I'm trying to lower spend. So unless I have some good reason for it, I'm just going to, for example, if it's a lottery campaign, something like that. And a couple these other ones are out of budget. So let's just kind of look through these. $10. Not great, not there as well. I think we're good on the budgets, but this I'll do several times throughout the day this time of year. This is about the only time of the year that I'll do this where I'm not glued to my computer, but I am checking it multiple times a day, especially for budget. Because one of the worst things you can do is be budget cap with these ever changing competition, how much traffic there is, to where your ads just stop delivering, especially the ones that are performing, and they just stop delivering and you lose rank and you lose that sales velocity. So it can have large ramifications. And if you do have more time that you can check this, you could lower your budgets each day. So we're going to go through a day, and at the end of the day, we're just going to kind of slash budgets and check those each day kind of as it goes and go through this process of looking at the data. I don't generally do that slash budget, especially since it's just generally going to increase for me throughout the sales season. So I'm really just looking at on the fly. Like once I increase something to like this one, 450, I'm probably not going to bring that down unless the performance is really bad where I want to micromanage it a little bit more. And then I might decrease the budget, because then I can go through the same operation of looking at different date ranges, look at all the data before it spends too much. That's about it for the optimizations that I would make. You could get into a little bit more with your hero product and checking it versus the competition, which I do. I'm not going to walk through it, but I am generally keeping an eye on my hero product versus a few of its known competitors that I compare it to. So looking at things like its BSR versus their BSR to see where they're at. You can also use tools like Helium 10 here to track the competition to see what your rank is on specific keywords versus others, and if you need to target or focus on a specific keyword. And you can even reverse engineer your competitors if you really want to dive into the details for them and see how much they're advertising still as we move through the holiday season. And that can be based on, again, with a tool like Helium 10 here using Cerebro, where you'll look up a specific ASIN and it'll tell you what their sponsored rank is on a search term. So you can see, one, if they are advertising at all, and get a sense of how aggressively they are as well. And that can help guide you on how aggressive you need to be with your product versus at competition as well. I think we're going to end it there with the optimizations. Stay tuned for more update videos and videos on tips and tricks throughout this holiday season and different strategies you can make. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and like below if you found anything useful out of this video, and we'll see you in the next one.